rain and stone, grass and moss, trees and hills. The mud runs down the stones, flowing down the hills, leaving the rocks bare, leaving the rocks looking like bones. Once mighty mountains now seem like an old corpse, thick, rotting flesh dripping from old, gnawed bones. The sky is grey and grim and damp, like the bed sheets of a 12-year-old boy. The wind cuts like a butter knife, not very deep, but extremely irritating. The trees look more like cancerous growths, putrid buboes protruding from the landscape like hardened, diseased flesh. The grass is like witch's hair, matted and tangled, caked in mud with odd creatures living in it. The rain is more bitter and deceitful than the tears of a Texan executioner, biting at the skin like the teeth of thousands of children. In these damp, nasty little hills, damp, nasty little things are happening. David McAvoy had a terrifyingly delighted smile on his face and a glint of yellow in his dark green eyes as he leaned over the squirming bundle lying upon the table in front of him. The whispering in his head was getting louder, even louder than the lost dog howl of the wind outside, louder than the constant rat-tat-tat-tat of the knife-like raindrops plunging themselves into the roof and walls. The whispering was urging him on, egging him on, pushing him on, driving him on, telling him he had to do it, telling him he wanted to do it, telling him he needed to do it, telling him it was the only thing he could do, telling him he would never, ever be free of the whispering if he didn't do it, telling him about the freedom that would come from doing it. Whispering, whispering, always whispering in his head. He couldn't shut it out. He had tried. First he tried to sing, to drown it out, but it could always be louder than him. He tried to stuff up his ears, to block it out, but it always got through. He tried taking the blade to both of his ears, carving them off to be deaf to the world and deaf to the whispering. But he could still hear it. He could still hear the whispering, always whispering. And now there was nothing else he could do. It had told him what to do, what it wanted him to do. It had told him why it would not leave him alone. There was nothing else. There was no other way. Nothing else he thought he could do. So he had crept into the village at the dead of night. He had slipped through the window like the shadow of a wolf. He had crept up to the cradle like dust on the draught, and he stole the child away and slipped back home. And there the child was, bundled in his blanket. It was smiling at him, reaching up to him, almost grasping at his face, reaching to his face. He could feel the tiny, fleshy digits against his nose and cheeks. The child's weak, curious little fingers trying vainly to grab a hold as he steeled himself and readied his knife. The whispering voice in his head laughed. He had never heard it laugh before. The laughing was worse. Nothing should be able to laugh in a whisper. The baby didn't scream. It didn't even cry. It would have been better if it had cried. The sound would have provided some distraction from having to stare it in its smiling, still living eyes as he carefully peeled and prized away its face with nothing but his knife and his bare fingers. The whispering voice almost cackled as he vomited across the floor, as he scraped away all of the fat and blood and rubbed salt into the back of the skin. But it stopped to give him orders, to tell him what to do, to take his belt punch and make holes along the edges of the face, to tie the leather thonging to each hole. It told him to put the face on like a mask. Fighting the feeling of thick, heavy revulsion rising up from his gut, he pulled the child's face over his own, and the second the baby's skin made contact with his, the leather thonging whipped and snapped around his head, knotting itself into place. He screamed in agony as a needle and thread whipped themselves out of nowhere and sewed the baby's face to his own with lightning speed. "You're mine," said the whispering voice, and the baby laughed. Babyface McAvoy. That's what they call him these days. They all know what he did, and they laugh at him for it. He should have known better than to follow the whispers. He should have known better than to steal a child from an abandoned house. He should have clubbed the child to death with an iron horseshoe. But now it had him. He speaks only in whispers. He seems happy and calm enough. The baby's face he wears as a mask is always smiling. But then you look into his eyes that never, ever match his expression, his eyes that are always darting here and there as if eternally looking for a way to escape, his eyes that never go together with the calm, whispered words coming from between the baby's lips, his eyes that scream to be set free. And the baby, the faceless baby that never died and never gets any older, it sits on the table and a blood.